Rebecca placed the folder on the dining table and smiled as though everything had already been decided long ago. "You're going to like this place, Mom," she said. "We've already been in touch with them." The room suddenly fell silent. Patricia Morgan looked down at the brochure in front of her. Photographs of a senior living community stretched across the glossy pages. Lush green gardens, spotless hallways, elderly residents smiling beneath warm sunlight. Everything looked perfect. Except for one thing. No one had asked what she wanted. Jason sat beside his wife, slowly taking a sip of wine. "The house is too big for you now, Mom. We're only trying to help." His voice was gentle, too gentle. Patricia did not answer right away. She looked at her daughter. Rebecca avoided her gaze for a brief moment before quickly looking down to straighten her napkin. It was a small gesture, but it was enough for Patricia to notice. For months, questions about the house had become more frequent. "Everything with the paperwork is still in order, right, Mom? Have you ever thought about moving somewhere more convenient? If the house were sold someday, it would be worth quite a lot." At the time, Patricia had always assumed they were harmless conversations. Now, the pieces were beginning to fit together. Dinner ended earlier than usual. No one argued. No one raised their voice. Yet as Patricia drove back to her home overlooking the Charleston River, she felt that something was changing. That house was more than a piece of property. It was the place she and her late husband had spent an entire lifetime building together. What Rebecca did not know was that years earlier, when Jason's business had been on the verge of collapse, Patricia had been the one who quietly saved them. No one except her personal attorney knew how much money had actually been used. To the rest of the family, Patricia was simply an elderly woman living alone. They had no idea that she still controlled a family investment fund worth several $1,000,000. And they certainly did not know that only a few days earlier, a neighbor had unintentionally told her something that changed everything. Jason had been bragging to his friends that one day this house would belong to his family. Patricia pulled into the driveway and stopped in front of the gate. Darkness had settled across the garden. For the first time in many years, she did not feel sad. She felt only one thing. She needed to know the truth. And the very next morning, she called her lawyer. The lawyer's office was not luxurious. There were no expensive paintings on the walls, no extravagant furniture meant to impress visitors. Everything about the place was neat, quiet, and precise. Patricia sat across from her personal attorney, Richard Hale, a man who had worked with her family for many years. He did not ask whether she was hurt. He did not ask whether she was angry with her daughter. Instead, he opened a file. Then he began with a simple question. "How many people currently have access to your assets?" Over the next 2 hours, document after document was placed on the table. Every signature was examined. Every authorization was reviewed. Patricia watched in silence. The deeper they looked, the clearer the truth became. Rebecca still had access to several accounts. Many of the documents had been signed years earlier, back when Patricia was simply trying to help her daughter through a difficult period. At the time, her trust had been absolute. Now, that trust was being tested. A week later, something unexpected happened. Patricia's granddaughter, Emma, stopped by after school. While they were talking, the teenager casually made a comment that caused Patricia to freeze. "Mom said the room by the window is going to be mine when we all move in here." Emma smiled innocently. She had no idea what she had just revealed. Patricia said nothing, but in that moment, every doubt she had been carrying suddenly found its answer. This was not a new idea. The plan had been in motion for months. That evening, Patricia called Richard. "Start whatever procedures are necessary." Her voice was surprisingly calm. Over the next 3 weeks, everything changed. Account access was removed. Authorizations were revoked. The will was updated. A new trust was established to protect every asset she owned. Meanwhile, Rebecca continued to call regularly. She talked about the future. She talked about the right time to move. She talked about plans that seemed already mapped out. Patricia listened to every word. She did not argue. She did not reveal anything. Because this time, Rebecca was not the only one making preparations. And when the final document was completed, Richard called her. "Everything is ready." Patricia looked out at the garden beyond her window. The evening sky was slowly growing darker. And she knew the moment that would change everything had finally arrived. 2 days later, Rebecca was sitting in her office when her phone rang. At first, she assumed it was just another routine call. But the moment the caller introduced himself as Patricia Morgan's attorney, the smile slowly disappeared from her face. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. There was no argument. No accusation. Only a series of brief, formal statements. Every previous access point to Patricia's assets had been revoked. All authorizations were no longer valid. Full financial decision-making authority now rested solely with Patricia. Rebecca sat frozen in her chair. When Jason noticed the expression on her face, he immediately walked over. What happened? Rebecca did not answer right away. For the first time, she realized that things were no longer unfolding according to plan. That evening, Patricia's phone rang. She stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. It was Rebecca. But this time, her voice sounded different. The familiar confidence was gone. So was the certainty that everything had already been decided. "Mom, why did you do this?" Patricia stood beside the window. The fading sunset cast a soft golden glow across the garden outside. When she answered, her voice remained calm. "Because it's my life." A long silence followed. Rebecca wanted to say something, but she could not find the right words. For years, she had believed she was helping. She had believed she knew what was best for her mother. Only now was she beginning to realize that she had never truly asked what her mother wanted. 3 weeks later, Rebecca came to visit Patricia alone. Jason was not with her. There were no plans, no calculations, no carefully prepared conversations. Just a mother and daughter sitting across from one another in a familiar kitchen. For the first time in many years, they spoke as two adults. Patricia did not cut her family out of her life, nor did she try to punish anyone. But she established clear boundaries. And at last, Rebecca understood something she should have known all along. Love does not give anyone the right to control another person's life. Patricia lifted the warm cup of coffee in her hands. Outside the window, the last light of day slowly faded. Inside the house, what had been reclaimed was not property. It was the right to choose her own life. Before we end, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you were in Patricia's position, how would you react after discovering that your own family had been making plans for your future without asking for your permission? Would you forgive Rebecca, or would it take time to rebuild that trust? Share your opinion in the comments below. Every family has its own challenges, and your perspective might help someone going through a similar situation. If you enjoyed this story and love emotional family dramas filled with powerful life lessons, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story.